Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask unanimous consent to suspend with further reading of House Bill 436.
Heard the unanimous consent request. Is there an objection? Hearing none, the good gentleman has the floor to open the debate on House Bill 436.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and body. I think by now you probably all know the details of this bill. We've had lots of discussions on this, but I'll go through it quickly one more time. So first of all, we consolidate the income tax brackets from 5 brackets to 4. We also lower the rates and lower the top bracket from 6.5 down to 6. Now, this action is worth about $250 million to Idaho taxpayers this year. We will make this retroactive as of January 1st, and so if this bill passes, we are currently now in these new rates. It, of course, also lowers the income tax bracket for corporations to 6%, also retroactive. And then it provides a one-time tax rebate of $350 million, returning approximately 12% of personal income tax paid in 2020, or $75 for each taxpayer dependent, whichever is greater. I want to point out that this is a rebate tax of taxes already paid by Idaho taxpayers. This is not a transfer payment. This is not a redistribution of wealth. And I don't call it an income tax rebate because it applies to sales tax as much as it does to income tax as far as rebate is concerned. All in all, there's over $600 million in tax relief between the bracket drop and the rebate portion of this. You should know that these reductions are also offset a little bit by $94 million from the tax relief fund. You know, this is nice. Usually, a big bill drags on through the session, lots of commotion, lots of frustration, and then gets jammed through the last week. We worked hard to avoid this time. We worked during the fall and during the early winter. We visited with House and Senate members, with stakeholder groups, got a lot of folks on board. We were far enough along that the governor, the gentleman on the second floor, was able to include this in his State of the State address. We even have a few dozen co-sponsors, so thank you for that. Here's a few fun facts. Idaho has very high income tax rates. Just there it is. Before last year's tax relief bill, we were probably fourth highest in the nation. Fourth highest in the nation, in the range where most folks pay, in the income range where most folks pay taxes. After last year's income tax bill, it brought us down to about 8th highest in the nation. Still not that great, but this brings it down perhaps a couple more notches to perhaps 10th highest in the nation for the typical income brackets, income ranges. What I mean by that, if you live in California, you might see a top bracket of 13.3%, and that's true. But if you're a family earning taxable income of $92,000, we tie California. New Jersey, New York, they still beat us. Typically, you'll notice across the state, the top brackets, across the nation, the top brackets typically run in the 4s and 5s, and ours is still in the 6s. But a good effort, good movement in the right direction. You know, from a sales tax point of view, a lower income spud family making $50,000 a year is not enough to really pay much in income taxes. You're not going to get much from an income tax rebate. But from a sales tax rebate, the effective rate is about 29% on their sales tax paid during that year. So it's frankly a pretty hefty sales tax rebate as well. And that's why I've been careful not to use the term income tax rebate, because it's not. It's a tax rebate of the kinds of taxes that Idahoans pay to the state. They pay it to the state, and we're able to put it back. We're doing a lot this year in education, in roads and bridges, in transportation. And we can do this too. That's the good news. Maybe some of you have seen Boise State's annual public policy survey. It mentions the surplus, huge number, and asks, what would you do with it? Well, increase teacher pay. Okay, check. Giving tax relief. Roads and bridges. Rainy day fund. So we're looking at tax relief here. So the next question they asked was, well, what kind of tax relief? Property tax and income tax tied at about 37.5%. People are concerned about property tax. People are concerned about income tax. I keep hearing this. I'm not getting any feedback on income tax. I'm hearing all about property tax. That's not true. Ask yourself, ask your neighbors, ask anybody you want to. But the survey says it's an important topic too. And is the tax that we collect. Sales tax, less than 20% as an interest. So let's do a lot. Let's provide the tax relief that Idahoans deserve. We collected too much from Idahoans. You might think this is the state's money, but none of it is. It's all taxpayers' money who give it to the state to do certain things with it. And the state has too much. It needs to be returned to their rainy day fund, to their educational pursuits, to their business pursuits, to their economy. And that's what we're doing here. And if I might, good speaker, I would move my opening to gentleman from 14.
Will the gentleman yield?
Gentleman yields.
Gentleman from 16 has the floor to continue the opening debate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make
14,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll make it quick. I think that the good gentleman did a good job. I want to approach it from just a little bit different angle, maybe, though. The world around us is going crazy right now. Do you watch the news every night? It's not good. Do you watch what's going on in D.C. and how those in charge there, our good Democrat friends, are trying to propose tax increases, trying to take away your right to vote, overregulation, inflation's through the roof. You look at the numbers in inflation and then you go buy a gallon of gas or food at the store, and in your mind you realize this isn't what they're telling me on the news. It's worse. A friend of ours that works in this building went to Costco yesterday. He goes, I had no idea how empty some of the shelves were. There's stuff not there because of why? We're living in crazy times. And these crazy times are affecting our Idaho citizens. They're affecting my children and grandchildren that still live here. They're affecting each and every one of you here and all of your constituents. The bill before you provides $600 million in relief, the largest in Idaho's history. $600 million in relief. It helps lower the bans for those who are paying taxes in Idaho. I want you to think about something. It's really hard to cut taxes for somebody who doesn't pay taxes. So we try to skew this that say we should help, but if they're not paying taxes, it's hard to give them a tax relief. So this bill tries to address that also. If you've been filing, you're going to get your $75 for you, your spouse, and your children. It helps alleviate the concerns for them. So a family of four, it's $300. And right now, that's a lot of money to a lot of people. I think that as we look forward, this also helps market Idaho in a better place. We have some of the highest income tax rates in the nation, and they start at a very low level. Family of four, 30,500, you're the rich. You're in the higher bracket. Welcome to Idaho. You're rich. The good gentleman used the example of California, but he forgot to tell you, if we don't pass this bill, he's still better off staying in California because it's cheaper there. That's not right. But that has an effect on the businesses that look at Idaho. Why do you want to come to a state that has higher income tax rates? They look at that. Those businesses want to make money. And when they make money, they pay higher wages. And when they pay higher wages, that helps our children and grandchildren stay. It helps Idaho's economy grow. And it makes us a markedly better place to come. If you don't think it's an issue, spend some little time and drive around some of the cities I represent, like Meridian and Star and Eagle. And you tell me what businesses are coming that are going to create the jobs that our children need if they want to stay here in Idaho. We're building houses. It's one of the problems we have with property tax, but that's another issue. I also have had a lot of concerns from some of my friends on the floor that have been worried about that this is the only bill and this isn't right. I have several property tax bills that I plan on bringing, and there is room for more tax relief. There's a lot of money there. This is just the bill that we have an agreement with and that gets money back out to Idahoans soon, like right away. The sooner we pass this, the sooner they can start sending the money out. It needs to happen soon. I also want to address the issue of education. The ongoing cost of this bill, I can almost guarantee, will be less than the ongoing increase in the appropriation through K-12. And that's important because education is important to all of us. So as we talk about this bill, I hope that we don't skew the facts. I hope we keep it to the fact that this is a great bill for Idaho. This moves Idaho markedly in the right direction to be more businesses here, and it helps those Idahoans that are paying taxes. And I hope that you can support the bill, and I look forward to the debate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Jump 29.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have a $1.9 billion surplus. By now, that's not news to anybody. 15 years ago, in this building, the words hold back, budget cuts, department cuts used to bounce off these walls left and right. It was just the times we were in. We didn't have enough revenue, and we couldn't meet our budget needs, and that was just our reality. And so hard decisions had to be made. And I can remember being in those committee meetings, and nobody, I mean, not even the most hawkish budget legislator, felt good about what we were doing back then, because we knew those holdbacks and budget cuts were going to result in long-term harm to our K-12 system, our universities, our colleges, our infrastructure. But hard decisions had to be made. In fact, we had rainy day funds that we often bypassed, wouldn't use, and it was because we didn't know how deep the hole was going to go. But here's something else that you would hear just as frequently as those terms, holdbacks, budget holdbacks, and budget cuts. It was legislators saying, but when we have the money, we'll do right by our schools, and we'll do right by higher education. We'll take care of these budgets then. Well, we've got the money now. The question that we need to answer as a body is, how do we spend this money? Where do we allocate it the most strategically to help Idaho families, the most effectively, and how do we do it consistent with the way Idaho families would have us do it? Well, I think we can all agree that regardless of how we spend it and how we each think it should be done, $1.9 billion presents an historic opportunity for us to do things right. So what should we do with it? Well, this bill will take $600 million of that and commit it to a tax cut, an income tax and a corporate tax cut, the vast majority of which will go to those who need it least. $350 million of that $600 million will be a rebate. Most will get $75, $150. Others can talk about the specific numbers that'll go to Idaho families. It's enough money to fill your gas tank and maybe go to dinner. That money, that rebate, will be spent within about a 3-hour period. And then it's gone. Won't be very memorable. It'll be about as memorable as that $50 or $60 check that I think we got last year. I don't even remember the amount. I don't remember what I spent it on. It's not what my constituents are asking me for. I can guarantee you, and if we did a poll and we did it in a way that nobody had to raise their hands in this body, I can guarantee that none of you have had your constituents knocking on your door, sending you emails, talking to you in the grocery store about the need to reduce their income tax rate or the need to reduce corporate tax rates. What they have been talking to you about is the grocery tax, likely. But I know they're talking to you about their property taxes. That subject comes up so often in Pocatello, I can almost predict it. And I don't even think we're facing what many property owners are facing in this state with their property taxes. It is front of mind. I understand somebody came here and presented prior to the session starting, somebody who had expertise on property tax and said that relatively speaking, Idaho was doing pretty good with property tax. I don't know what to make of that. It feels a little like a doctor telling me that when I show up with extreme pain, that the doctor can find no objective evidence, so I don't really have pain. I don't know what to do with that. It's pain. I feel it. That's what our constituents are telling us, is that they are feeling the pain of property tax and they want us to address it, and we haven't done it. We're making a choice to spend $600 million on this. I think tax relief very definitely should be part of what we do with this money. It is only right. It is only fair. But there's a lot of other things Idahoans want done with this money. They are worried about their schools. They are worried about teachers leaving and not coming back. And the cost of that to our school districts is enormous. Having to retrain teachers, having to find them and hire them. Having paraprofessionals not willing to stay in public education because they can make more money. There are so many things. That's just education and just a part of the things that we could spend in education. There are so many things that we need to do with this money. My biggest concern is that right out the gate, we've taken $600 million off the table. We're committing. We cannot claw it back. We cannot say later in this session, oh, I wish we would have just gone with the corporate and income tax rate reductions and $250 million and not done the one-time rebate. We can't do that once we vote for this bill. We've committed $600 million, and that's something we'll have to live with. We don't want to make that commitment, then realize we could have been more strategic, more effective in how we spent the money, and more importantly, and perhaps most importantly, done it, spent it, committed it towards property tax relief, towards grocery tax credit in a way that's more consistent with what Idaho working families want. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I am aware of a ringing that goes off when I stand up, right? You don't hear it now. I see several of you gentlemen adjusting. I think it's on our end, not on your end, so we'll see what we can do to fix this here and go forward. So I got it. No more texts. Good gentleman from District 34.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak in favor of this bill. It's an exciting day for Idaho. It's not very often on the floor of the House that we get to vote for tax cuts. We'll vote 90 or 100 times on spending bills this session. Many of them will have spending increases. We'll vote on program increases. We'll vote on expanding government many times in here. But not very often do we get to stand up and vote for tax cuts. This is day one of success for the Idaho Conservative Agenda. And for those of you who are not aware of it, the Idaho Conservative Agenda is a list of policies and priorities that 31 legislators have gotten together to agree on. Among those are restoring freedoms, reducing taxes, protecting rights, and limiting government. One of the priorities on that conservative agenda is cutting taxes. And that's what we're here to do today. The Idaho Conservative Agenda wants tax cuts. Among them are income tax cuts. The priority is a little different on the agenda, but we'll take the income tax cuts when they come. We'll work on those. This is a significant cut in taxes. Like it's mentioned, $600 million, but it's actually less than that from the surplus because of the use of the tax relief fund. And we're pleased to see that tax relief fund go to where it is intended to go, and that is back into Idahoans' pockets. The gentleman on the second floor is getting the tax cuts he wants, the ones that he stated in the State of the State address. He's getting them first here in the second week. This is the very first bill we're voting on and passing in the House. The governor's getting his preferred tax policy. Now, after this, let's turn our attention to the tax policy that Idahoans desperately need and have been asking for: grocery tax repeal and property tax relief. It was mentioned in the opening that we have one of the highest income taxes of states, and it's great that we can reduce that. But we are also a leader of states in terms of grocery tax. We have the third highest tax on food amongst the states.
Good gentlemen, we are debating House Bill 436.
Absolutely, and we can relate it to other options for tax policy as well.
As long as we keep it with 436.
That's great. 436 is great. It's the first step on the three-legged stool of tax cuts that the conservative agenda promotes. And let's vote yes for this. Turn our attention to the other two legs of that stool. Hey, maybe add a fourth leg. Let's cut the tax on gasoline as well. Idahoans are desperately in need of protecting their homes from being taxed out from under them, paying too much on food. The inflation shouldn't benefit the government. It should, in terms of higher taxes for food, so we can cut that tax too. And I'm in support of this, and I look forward to more tax cuts to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Good lady from District 18.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, to debate against the bill.
You have the floor.
Well, thank you. Well, first, I want to direct your attention to the handout that is on all your tables from the good lady to my left from District 19 that outlines who will get how much from this tax cut. Now, this is not a surprise. I think everybody has either seen or knows that it would look something like this. And it's not a surprise to me because, frankly, and if I sound frustrated, it's because I really am. I really feel that this legislature has been a one-trick pony for years when it comes to tax policy. Every time we have two dimes to rub together, this is what we see. A big income tax cut where almost all the money goes to the people in the top 1%, and there are scraps for those in the bottom. And we always see a chart like this. In some years, it shows $5,000 to people in the top 1% and $40 to the poor working folks. Sometimes it shows $8,000 to people in the top 1% and $60 to people at the bottom. But the underlying story is pretty much always the same, where the wealthy and well-connected are showered with money, and there's scraps for everyone else and the people that need it. One year, ironically, the bill actually came up on Groundhog Day. This year, I guess it just metaphorically feels like Groundhog Day. But I think these numbers speak for themselves. But I'm going to focus just personally. This bill saddens me for a number of reasons. At the first level, I want to talk about the timing and the priorities of this body. There are so many pressing needs in the state of Idaho right now, arising from underinvestment over the course of a decade or more. As we all know, we're the lowest education funding per pupil in America. We're hemorrhaging teachers who are grossly underpaid as compared to other states and other professions. We have a childcare crisis that's leading to a workforce crisis. If businesses are leaving the state, it's not because of our income tax rate or our corporate tax rate. It's because they can't find childcare for their workers, and they can't find an educated workforce, and they can't find housing for their workforce. We have crises in all of those areas. As we all know, we're one of only 4 states that have no early childhood education. We have a foster care system on the brink of collapse. We recently learned that a majority of EMS directors around the state can't get ambulances to people in a timely fashion when they're facing medical emergencies because they can't afford staff. We have over 1,500 bridges in need of repair at a cost of over $2 billion. I could go on for a long time. I'll stop there. But the good gentleman in his introductory remarks act like it was a done deal that we've solved these things. It's like, well, this year we've got all this money. We've solved education funding. We've solved infrastructure. So it's time for tax cuts. As we sit here, this came in before almost any committee had gavelled into session. There hasn't been a penny put into education yet this session. There hasn't been a penny put into infrastructure. We have solved no problems as we sit here today. Absolutely nothing. Anything is just aspirational. That maybe if there's leftover money after this giant $600 million task cut, maybe then we'll get around to the schools. But this really bothers me. I feel like we should have rushed in and addressed education. We should have rushed in first thing and addressed bridges not falling down. I mean, it's just very frustrating that there's a feeling that, well, all of that stuff can wait. First things first, we got to cut $13,000 checks to millionaires. I mean, let's get our priorities straight here, people, right? This is just, it's just distressing. I don't know if your mamas all taught you to eat your ice cream before your vegetables, but mine didn't. And I really think that giant tax cuts that predominantly benefit the wealthy and well-connected and most profitable corporations should get to the back of the line after we fund our schools and our bridges. So I would just put that to you and just say that personally I find it just depressing to see the lightning speed and single-mindedness with which this body has super prioritized this case study in trickle-down economics. But to move on, I guess, and this, I think the good gentleman from 29 got to this well, but, I think a lot about this in many regards. I'm concerned about the state of our representative democracy. And boy, do I feel that this bill is a case study in what's wrong with our representative democracy. Now, I'm always told we don't live in a democracy, we live in a republic. But I don't think that means that we're obligated to totally ignore what the people actually want. I don't think that's what a republic means, that you need to put the needs and wants of the actual people at the very bottom of your list, which is kind of what this did. Anybody, we have polling on this. We know what Idahoans want. Look at those BSU polls they do over the years that are balanced across the state. 68% of people want grocery tax relief. We know anybody who's opened their email or left their front door or talked to another living, breathing human being over the last 5 years knows that Idahoans want property tax cuts. That's what you hear. And you know what no constituent said ever is I would like an income tax cut that gives $13,000 to people in the top 1% and 75% to working families at the bottom. I never got that email. I don't know if it got lost. I have to admit, don't necessarily make it to every single email inbox, but I don't think that one's in there. Now, I know you're all thinking, here go the Democrats voting against a tax cut. They always want to oppose those tax cuts. Well, I want to tell you, I'm standing up against this bill today because I want tax cuts. Because I want tax cuts. It bears repeating, I am standing against this bill because I want tax cuts. I just want tax cuts that will actually help people and help the people that need it, help working families, tax cuts that correlate to what the people of Idaho actually want. And this bill is mutually exclusive from those, I appreciate the good gentleman from 34 speaking up in favor of the grocery tax cut. But these are mutually exclusive. This bill passes today, we ain't getting that. A vote for this bill today is a vote against elimination for all practical purposes of the grocery tax. Because there is no way, we got a lot of money this year, but we don't have enough money for that. We do not have enough money to meet the priorities outlined by the gentleman on the second floor when it comes to education and infrastructure and other vital needs, things that I think we do need to address, to do this $600 million and to get rid of the grocery tax. Ain't happening. So passing this today means you are telling your constituents, I would rather send $13,000 checks to millionaires than eliminate your grocery tax. And frankly, it's effectively mutually exclusive from meaningful property tax relief because it wipes out the most logical, obvious funding for property tax relief, which would be that Wayfair fund that's been dubbed the tax relief fund. If we didn't have that money in that Wayfair fund, if it were just treated like internet sales tax, all that money would already be going to property tax relief. Siphoning that away is eating it directly out of the prospects for property tax relief. So, I really urge you to see it through that lens. I know you're thinking, hey, who doesn't love tax cuts? You got to choose between tax cuts. And choosing this tax cut means you are ruling out other tax cuts. And I think those other tax cuts are more meritorious. They would do more favors to the people of Idaho, and they certainly are what the people of Idaho want. And those options will effectively disappear once this $600 million is out the door. So, I've talked a little about people and what the people want. I've talked a little about priorities. But I'm also just concerned about the policy here, which I really see as stunningly regressive. I know I've heard this narrative that, well, we're just giving people back the money that they paid. And if rich people get more back, it's just because they paid more. And how can you give money back to people who didn't pay taxes? Well, there's a lot there that's problematic. First of all, poor people pay plenty of taxes. They're paying lots of sales taxes, lots of grocery taxes, lots of property taxes, a whole lot more than $75 in taxes, I'll tell you. And there's an almost infinite number of ways that you could craft a $600 million tax cut. And it's, frankly, almost impossible to find a way to craft a $600 million tax cut that gets less money to the working families of Idaho. Almost anything else you do, whether it's grocery taxes, property taxes, restructuring the brackets so that only, higher earning people pay at that 6.5%. There's so many ways you could structure this that would actually get money to the people that need it. And it's extremely disappointing that this legislature has zeroed in on the one mode of doing it that makes sure almost every single penny of benefit goes to the wealthiest people and corporations in the state. So it's simply, we have so many options before us. So it's not like this is our only choice in how we can do tax cuts. But I think it's also just fundamentally not true that we're just giving people back the money that they paid. This tax cut is being funded in large part by that internet sales tax revenue. So let's back up a little bit on that, because this is incredibly important. And I don't think many people appreciate how the system works. And when they do, I've talked to Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, I can't find anybody who thinks this current system's a good idea. But the way it works is that, I buy this lovely jacket, down at my local brick and mortar store, and I pay my 6% sales tax, and all that sales tax goes into a big fund, and 11.5% of it goes to the locals to pay for your sheriff and your DMV and your prosecutor and all the things they have to do. And the other 88.5% goes to the general fund, where most of it goes to education and other state needs. I buy this same jacket on Amazon, still pay the 6% sales tax, but not one penny of it goes to the locals, not one penny of it goes to the schools or the general fund. It all goes to fund a tax cut for millionaires. So the money for this is actually coming from sales tax. Now, it's pretty established by more or less every economist on earth that the sales tax is the most regressive tax there is. It's by far more disproportionately paid by lower income people than income tax is. I have some data for you on that. But the reasoning for that basically is the poor typically spend about 3/4 of their income on items that are subject to sales tax, whereas higher income folks pay about 1/6 of their income on items that are subject to the sales tax. So that money is predominantly coming from poorer people. So this is straight up a reverse Robin Hood scheme. This bill literally takes money from the poor and gives it to the rich. It takes money collected from poor people through sales tax and gives it through an income tax cut to the highest earning people. Why are we doing this? Who would want this? I think it's just we're relying on the notion that the public will be so overwhelmed by the complexity and boringness of tax policy that they'll never dig in and find this out. Nobody who understood how this works would like this. It's so upside down from what I think we should be doing. And so all in all, I know this is an election year, and I'm sure in this coming election, Idahoans will be told how blessed and fortunate that they are, that they got the biggest tax cut in state history, and they got these beautiful $75 checks, which is what most of them are going to get. And I really hope they dig into the details and ask the harder questions. I hope they ask that question of who got how much of this tax cut. I got my $75. How much did the millionaire in my town get? I hope they ask, what other forms of tax cuts could there have been, and how much would I have gotten under those? And what tax cuts didn't we pass because we passed this one? I hope they ask where the money came from. I hope they get to the bottom and learn how this internet sales tax system works. I hope they learn that it was actually the sales tax they paid that's financing the $13,000 cuts for millionaires. Because I just feel that if people understood the ins and outs of this, this would be a deeply, deeply unpopular bill. And folks just don't understand in the world out there how it works. And I hope they do, because this is not good policy, and it saddens me that we're heading in this direction. And I really hope that you today will stand for the true interests of the people of Idaho and shoot this down so that we have time to work through our education funding, our infrastructure funding, and get to some forms of tax cuts that actually help the working people of Idaho, which this does not.
Is there further debate? Lady from 35.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really admire how the good lady from District 18 can speak so quickly and thoughtfully. I don't have that skill, so I really admire it. I would like to say that our Idaho families are suffering. We've had families, breadwinners that have lost their jobs, they've gotten fired for protecting their medical privacy and rights. Inflation is affecting our families. So we need to do some things to help them. I like what the good gentleman from 34 said about the three-legged, I was calling it the three-pronged approach in reducing our taxes. The timing, I thought of that. And, you know, as has been mentioned, often we rush through, and the last week we have something we've got to address. We don't get to fully vet it and think about it. So I do appreciate that we are out of the gate doing some tax relief for our citizens. As has been mentioned also, we have nearly a $2 billion surplus so far. And so I would like my constituents to know that this is only one step in lowering and reducing taxes for our citizens. We know that you're hurting. We receive emails and texts and calls from our citizens. And I believe that our families and our businesses can spend the money much better than government entities. Our cities, our counties, our state entities, we need to review and find places that we can cut. If we have a downturn in the economy, let's not raise taxes. Let's find ways that we can cut. And our family budgets, you can't just go out and find more money. It doesn't work that way. So we have a responsibility to use their hard-earned dollars or hopefully return them to our citizens. And so I will be supporting this, and I will be pushing for grocery tax repeal as well as property tax relief. So thank you.
Is there further debate? Gentleman from 12.
Mr. Speaker, I stand to debate in favor of the bill. Things are not so dire as I've heard from some people speaking here today. Idaho has a great history of fiscal conservatism in their planning for many years, and that's why we're here today with a $1.9 billion increase that we have in taxes, more money than we know what to do with in some ways. This year we can have our cake and eat it too. This is the start of it. This is a good tax cut bill. I applaud those who have put it together. Even today, the gentleman on the second floor was on national news speaking on one of my favorite shows and being asked, how can we export what you're doing in Idaho to other states? We've done a good job for many years. Thank you to those who have gone before us on our tax policies. Let's keep improving them. There's things to do. And oh, by the way, on page 3, sub 4, there's a nice part in here for those who are getting tax rebates that don't really want them. You can go through the tax commission setup and donate your money to the public schools or other good things, and I encourage people to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further debate? Gentleman from District 17.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, as I was listening to the sponsor's opening remarks, he pointed out that 37% wanted property tax relief. Same number as income tax. And as you think about the 37%, remember that 60 to 65% of Idahoans are homeowners. That means probably, very likely, well over half the homeowners in this state want property tax relief. And as this 37% figure came up, I kind of thought to myself, well, why is that? You know, why are they saying they want, all these homeowners want property tax relief? And so I had a couple of questions to myself, and I said, well, which tax has increased steadily by as much as 100% in the last 5 years? Property tax. Which tax has seen the addition of non-payers, resulting in an increase for homeowners and rental homes because of the property tax equalization? The property tax. Which tax has pummeled homeowners because of inflation? The property tax. The property tax isn't in this bill.
Gentleman from 28. You scared or?
Am I up?
You are up.
Thank
You
you.
have the floor.
I find it interesting that there's a question of where we should send the money, that there's a lot of different places we should send the money. And I guess I think of things a little bit simpler, but I know that there's a legislator that's here today who has breakfast every morning at Elmer's Pancake House. And this legislator knows the whole staff, and he goes in, sits down, and they bring him his breakfast because he eats there so often. He eats there every day, and apparently he orders the same thing. Because I was there one day when I saw this thing unfolding and asked them about it, and I got thinking about that and thought, if the manager came up to him and said, "We've made a mistake over the last year, and we've inadvertently charged you $2 more a meal than we should have," and behind the scenes, he's rubbing his hands together saying, $2 times all those meals, I'm going to get a nice rebate here. This is really going to be great. And then I sidle over to them and say, well, I've eaten here twice in the last year. We should get an equal check, shouldn't we? Well, this legislator wouldn't think I should get, he should get the full amount that he paid. That's only fair, that's only right. But unfortunately, the manager says, we've got this money, it's just sort of the computer put it in this savings account. We've got this big block of money that we need to do something with. And since we've overcharged you $2 every meal, we decided to give that money to the cooks and the waitresses and the guy who shovels the snow and everybody else. And like, hold it. I'm the one who paid the money. If there's money to be returned, shouldn't you return it to me? And that makes sense to me. I don't know where I'm getting this disconnect that it's wrong for us to send money that we've collected to anybody else except the people that we collected the money from. And so I would hope that also down the road that we can do something about property tax. I can't stand property tax. But right now, the only thing I have to vote on is income tax, and I'm going to be voting in favor of this bill, and I hope you all will too.
Thank you. Is there further debate? The lady from 33.
Mr. Speaker, friends, thank you. I'll try not to be long, but somewhere I would like to use the word meritorious. Haven't quite heard that word before, but it's a good one. As we have this opportunity to do something about taxes, I was thinking back on last year, and the good gentleman from 21 and 14, I mean, it's almost like you can't win for losing. I was involved in those discussions last year all session long. It didn't come up at the end. It was all session long on what to do in regards to taxes. And I actually am one of them who enjoyed's the wrong word, appreciated the legislation that we passed. I appreciate this legislation to this point also and see it as being important. I do hope, though, as we talk about such things as property taxes, that I believe all of us have a different idea of what that means. As a matter of fact, I'd suggest for many of us, when we get this check, save it to help pay your property taxes. But when it comes to property taxes, if we really want a reduction in property taxes, there's not much we can do. Let me say that again. If we really want a reduction in property taxes, there's not that much that we can do because property taxes is a local taxing entity. What we could do is remove some of the hands that are in the pot, and try to remove some of the hands in the pot that have an ability to take your property taxes. So knowing how much money too is out there and going to education, Holy Hannah. I expect to see our educators to be thrilled about the amount of money that will be going to education. This is not going to interfere with the amount of money going to education. At some point, we have to decide where we stand when it comes to being taxed. I, for one, do not want the government taking more than it has to. So I will be supporting this. I hope you will support this. And when it's time to talk about property taxes, remember this. The only way to really reduce property taxes is to have local entities quit spending. Thank you.
Is there further debate? The gentleman from District 31.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've been interested in the debate that's been ongoing today and also in the last few days, and in hearing, people talk about it, in reading things on online and on social media threads, in talking to people outside of this body and so forth. As I've considered this bill and the concept behind it, some big picture concepts come to my mind. And one of them is the concept of, do we want bigger government or smaller government? I think that the era of small government may have passed us by, so I don't use the term small government, but I will use the relative terms bigger or smaller government. And I'm in the camp of smaller government, and for those that are in that camp, the best way to achieve that is when we have an opportunity to cut taxes to do that. The tendency is if there's revenue, if there's surplus revenue available, we spend it. By definition, we, the government, spending more money equals bigger government. Let's take this opportunity to rein that in a little bit and stand for smaller government. Concept number two, this is a phrase that kind of catches my interest when I see it, and that is wealth redistribution. I hear people criticize this approach to tax relief that we're taking today, and they'll say, you're giving the money to those who need it the least. The truth of the matter is that the taxes in Idaho are generally raised. A super large majority of the taxes are paid by who we would term as the wealthy or the well-to-do, or at least not the needy. And so that argument, if you carry it out to its conclusion, is we should take money through tax revenues from those who can afford to pay it. And then when it's time to deal with a surplus budget, we should give it back to those who need it most. That is my definition of wealth redistribution, and I am not in that business. Another thing that goes along those lines is what I consider to be one of the most important questions of our time, and that is the question of what are we after? Are we after equality of opportunity, or are we after equality of result? I think that to the extent that we hear these arguments that government should be funded by those who can afford to fund it, and that we should increase or at least not ever decrease that burden, and that we should take that and redistribute it to those who need it most, I think that that's in essence an argument that we should strive for equality of result. And that sounds great on the surface, but what is the cost of that? I would suggest to you that if we're going for equality of result rather than equality of opportunity, that we do that at the cost of our freedoms. I would suggest that we do that at the cost of our free markets and at the cost of capitalism. I think that there is, I'm all for equality of opportunity. If we're trying to make it so that the results and everyone ends up in the same place, by definition, we have eliminated free choice. And I don't think that that's a good policy. Lastly, even though we like to rip on quote-unquote trickle-down economics, I think that we can all agree that everyone in the state of Idaho benefits from a robust, strong economy. And one way to achieve that is to have competitive income tax and corporate tax rates. And I think that this bill will be a step in that direction. I'm proud of this legislation, and I'll be a yes vote. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Good lady from District 5.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good ladies and gentlemen, I just want to share one thing that's just really been bothering me in the course of this debate, not only here in the Capitol, but amongst friends and constituents across the state. I'm really tired about hearing how terrible millionaires are and how this is benefiting millionaires. And I want to talk a little bit about that. My entire career, professional career, has been as a fundraiser. And the reason why I've liked doing that in Idaho is because the millionaires in Idaho are not trust fund babies. They earned that. They weren't given it. They weren't handed it. They earned it. And those folks are the first people that we go to in our communities when we need help. We want to grow our school. We want to build this playground. We want to do some renovations on our church. Those are the first people that we go to. And those are the people that buy tickets to all those events, that contribute to all of those charity auctions, that show up and help fund our communities across the state. And I am so tired of hearing that it's the millionaires, only the millionaires are going to benefit from this. By God, this state has benefited from our millionaires, and I'm thankful for them. And if this tax break is benefiting our millionaires, I know it's going to come back to our little communities everywhere in this state, and I'm thankful for that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there further debate? Gentleman 27.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a couple of concerns about this bill, and I'll try and stick with the bill. We're about to spend $600 million today, part of it ongoing, on a projection. We don't have $1.9 billion yet. Now, we've got a significant portion of that in the bank, but we don't have $1.9 billion yet. We got our biggest months to come in, and we could still wind up short a couple of $300 million. Secondly, I'm not going to talk about where we ought to be spending it because that's not part of this bill. But the fact is that we live in the fastest growing state in the United States, or if not, awful close to it. And a lot of that surplus is because of that growth. And we're not taking that money and plowing it back into the infrastructure, one-time expenditures, to support that population. And what we're about to do is cut the revenue stream that is going to allow us to do that into the future. And, Mr. Speaker, this kind of reminds me or smells a little bit like the way Congress operates and not the way that the Idaho legislature has operated for the last 15 years that I've been here. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there further debate? Lady from Levin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to rise really quick. I'll be supporting this piece of legislation. It's not my favorite. It's not what I'm hearing from my constituents is their top priorities. Again, it goes back to the desire for property tax and grocery tax. That's what I'm hearing from my constituents. I'm hoping, underlining hope, that we'll be able to bring more ideas. There's a lot of taxes out there. There's a lot of taxes we could cut. And I'm hearing a similar theme with limited government and less government. And I hope we remember that as we go through this legislative session. And that the people are the ones, this is their money. It doesn't matter how much of it comes from the federal government. It doesn't matter how much of it comes from the state. It's the people's money. We were hoping to have property tax somewhat taken care of last session. I was disappointed in that aspect. I was hoping that we could do more. But again, there's a lot of taxes that we can cut, that we can limit. And if we really believe in limited government and smaller government, then we need to remember that as we go through this legislative session. So I'll be supporting this. Again, like I said, it's not my favorite, but it is a tax cut in all ways and means. And while it may not be a lot, it is a little bit. And I think anything that we can give back to the people is good. But I'm hoping that we can do a lot more and a lot better. So thank you.
Is there further debate? Gentleman from 22.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will try to be brief here. A couple things that I've just reminded me of. My first 6 years here, there was no tax cut bills. And it wasn't because there was no desire to do it, and it wasn't because there was no money to do it. It's because we couldn't agree upon what we wanted to cut. And I've remembered that, and I try to remember that lesson well. It also reminds me of my own personal household, how we manage our money there at home. And frankly, my wife does most of the managing of that, but I will pretend for this debate here that I manage it a little bit. But we have expenses and we have income. And then we have a bottom line. When I reduce my expenses, my bottom line goes up, right? When my revenue increases, my bottom line goes up. This will increase the budgets for every Idahoan that's paying taxes. They're going to have more money. At the end of the day, their bottom line is going to be bigger. Now, in that budget, they paid for lots of things. Insurances, their rent, mortgage, clothes, birthday party stuff, taxes on whatever. They paid for all those things in that budget. And frankly, I don't care which one of those things you cut in their budget as long as the bottom line gets more. That's how it works in my house. My bottom line goes up, I'm happy. We're giving more money back to the citizens. Frankly, this is one of my favorite tax bills ever. The favorite tax bill that we've ever done since I've been here, because it's $600 million back to the people. I don't care how you slice it, how you call it, whatever, what line you want to put it in your budget. It's $600 million back to the people. Part of that's one time, part of that's ongoing from now in perpetuity. I love that. This is a great bill. I am super excited about it. I can't say enough about how much I'm loving this bill. I hope you can support this bill as well.
Is there further debate? Good gentleman from District 15.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to comment on a few things that have been said so far. Points have been made mention about, well, we're not starting at the last week of the session, we're starting at the first week of the session. Well, it's not about the start time, it's about the elapsed time to consider a bill. And so we have made an improvement. We're going from about 3 hours when we considered House Bill 389 to about 3 days. I submit that 3 days is not a sufficient amount of time to consider the single largest tax cut in the history of the state of Idaho. Also, it's been mentioned that we're ranked very high in income tax, ranked 4th or 3rd or 5th or so forth. But Idaho is ranked actually about 36th in the nation when you look at overall tax burden, which means that if you have to look at this whole issue in a more holistic view and not just take one piece of it. Idaho is nowhere near the top when it comes to overall tax burden. My concern, quite frankly, is that this is an exercise in short-term thinking, and it might be good politics between now and May 17th, but it is not good long-term policy.
Is there further debate? Good lady from District 6.
Okay, I think I'm with you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am in support of this bill, and I'm coming from a little bit different approach. The business sector that is the engine that drives our economics in this state, this is giving a tax cut in that area, which I believe is extremely important. And from where I'm from, we've lost a lot of retail, large employers, and we are suffering there. And with this percentage that we are lowering, that is extremely good news for business. And as we think about growth in our state, and those of you in this part of the state, your growth is huge. Up in North Idaho, it's huge, but North Central and in these rural communities, we really are suffering, and we need to encourage businesses to come. And when we look at our business taxes, and we are high in the third, fourth, or fifth tier here in the nation, we need to inspire and encourage growth in our business world. So I will support this bill, and I do agree with many of you that there should be more tax cuts to come, and property tax is something that I also think we need to really look at. Thank you.
Is there further debate? Good lady from District 14.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, to debate in favor of the bill. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, this is not an either-or proposition. Again, this is not an either-or proposition. You know, I appreciated the invitation to consider what my mother taught me. And one of the things that my mother taught me is mental math. And by my mental math, when we spend $600 million of $1.9 billion of the people's money to return the people's money, it leaves a little more room in that calculation to send even more money back, whether that be in grocery tax or property tax, that most un-American of all of the taxes that we tax our people, the tax on their shelter, on their homes. Surely there is enough room, by my mental math, that we can do more, and I believe we will do more. Now, we are doing more for education, and I expect, again, there is room in this number, in this $1.9 billion number, to be able to make those important investments in education and roads. But as we've had a lot of lists and priorities discussed today, let me give you one list or number to consider. U.S. News and World Report recently reported, June 2021, that Idaho was 5th nationally in terms of our high school readiness for college. Very reputable report. We are standing in, and pay attention to these states that I list here, interestingly, starting from the top. Connecticut, Illinois, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Idaho, 5th in the nation behind those states, followed by Colorado, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Maine, and Hawaii. Now, if we don't think that the continued investment that we have made, the smart, strategic investments that we have made in education are not making a difference, look to this list. Or you could look to NAEP scores. Our NAEP scores, again, in the top 10 in reading for our 4th graders, top 15 for our 8th graders. There is evidence out there. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't need to do more strategic investments, but make no mistake, there is enough in that math number, in that $1.9 billion, to do more and to give back more to the people. So I will be supporting this.
Is there further debate? The lady from District 19.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and welcome back. We missed you. Charming stories about Elmer's aside, and I'm hungry for pancakes now. We're not actually sending money back to where it came from. We don't only collect income tax. That's not what we're doing in this bill, and it's not a principle that this body lives by in recent history that I've seen. It's in the bill itself. We're taking money from the lockbox where we put those online sales tax dollars, and we're pushing it out in an income tax rebate. You've seen the data, you know how lopsided this is. And it's a repeat of a pattern. We take money from all sources and then give it back in corporate and income tax cuts. I shared a chart that shows the corporate rate over time for this century, as well as our sales tax rate. The corporate tax rate is also a stand-in for the top income tax rate. You can see it going down, 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 down over time, where sales tax has only gone up. Sales tax has gone up from 5% to 6%. This body only seems to favor lowering the tax rate that hits the wealthy and corporations a little harder, and then kind of turns a blind eye when the taxes that lower and moderate incomes are hurt the most by then that's the sales tax and the property tax. And those folks, they absolutely are low and moderate Idahoans. They are absolutely paying taxes. And when you take state and local taxes together, they pay a higher share of the income than those at the top. You know, the lowest 20% of households pay 9.2% of their income in taxes when you put state and local taxes together. The top 1% pays 7.2%. That we tax Idahoans living paycheck to paycheck deeper into poverty is morally troubling, but also just foolhardy. When kids grow up with the toxic stress of poverty, experiencing homelessness or frequent moves, they are less likely to succeed as adults. We should be very concerned about these families. It's been said, there's been a lot said about our tax brackets. With this bill, married couples earning $42,000 a year they'll just barely hit that top rate and then face the same marginal tax rate as the millionaires, as anyone, anyone who's higher income, however they earn that income. The solution, however, is not to cut taxes on the independently wealthy. That's not the solution to the problem of a family facing modest wages and the millionaire paying the same tax rate. I don't understand why we keep doing this, lowering the taxes for the people who, again, need it the least. Every tax policy change has a wealth redistribution impact, and this one is a reverse Robin Hood type, and I don't think that's what Idahoans want. I saw the same Boise State polling that others saw. Only 24% of Idahoans wanted us to pursue revenue cuts with the surplus. Now, I think we can give some money back, but I don't think, again, this is not the top priority. And for those quarter of a people who said the income tax was their preferred tax cut, I can't imagine that this is what they wanted, where the middle income, the middle 20% of our Idahoans, those households, get an ongoing benefit of $168 a year, and the top 1% gets a benefit of $5,000 a year. I think you pull on that question, and it'll be very clear that that's not what Idahoans want. A lot has been said about where our tax system ranks. If you go to the Idaho Tax Commission tax burden study, our individual income taxes paid per person have us at 32nd in the nation and 20% below the national average. You know, I guess I just want to make one. It's been said that we can have this bill and do the other things we want to do. We can still repeal the sales tax on groceries. We can still reduce property taxes. I will eat my hat if we pass this bill and repeal the sales tax on groceries. I've seen the math. It's not happening. So let's be real clear and honest about that. And let's be honest about the fact that, as shown in this chart, this reduces the corporate tax rate down to 6%, The same rate we will continue to ask Idahoans to pay in sales tax on groceries, diapers, medicines, and other basic necessities. Ask yourself if that's what you think Idahoans want. This is, we see what's happening in our state. A lot of people are flooding in, and they have a lot more money than people who have been making Idaho wages their whole lives. This income inequality is causing a lot of problems in the fast-growing parts of our states. The well-moneyed people, they can buy one house. Sometimes they come in and they buy 2 houses or 3 houses. That's what's happening in my neighborhood. And, Idahoans who have been living here, they just can't compete. We have this upside-down economy where the haves have so much, and the people struggling, working paycheck to paycheck and just trying to get by, they can't compete. This bill is just going to exacerbate that imbalance and the inequality and compound it over time with these ongoing impacts. And we just have to take better care of our Idahoans because they're getting left behind. We have to pursue policies that put more dollars in the hands of our working families because those are the people who get their car repaired at the local mechanic, they get their hair cut at the local barber shop, they buy their groceries, they hire a neighbor to mow the lawn. All of those things generate the important activity in local economies that make an economy thrive. We need a strong middle class for a strong economy, and this bill takes us further away from that goal. But kind of the bad economics aside, this is troubling in another way. This is a copycat of last year's bill, and I didn't get a single email from anyone in the state saying, wow, that was really great, please do that again. I have been getting so many emails from people asking about the sales tax on groceries and property tax. I haven't been contacted by anyone around this saying vote yes on this income tax cut. In committee, every constituent who testified opposed the bill, and only lobbyists were in favor. And it's one thing to be out of touch and maybe not understand what Idahoans are facing when it comes to the exploding rents, exploding home prices. But it's another thing to willfully ignore what they're asking us to do. And I think that's why I'm going to echo the lady from 18. I feel sad today. Last year I felt weary because we've been having this debate over and over again because this is the only kind of tax reform this body seems to be able to endorse. But today I just feel sad because it feels like something is seriously broken in our political system when a supermajority can ram through a bill that voters are asking us to reject. And this is being called historic, and indeed I think it's probably the first time the Idaho legislature has pushed $600 million towards something that's so disappointing to Idahoans. I mean, if this is historic, where's the parade? Where are our phones ringing off the hook? Where are emails being flooded with people telling us we must support this bill? If we had a bill to repeal the sales tax on groceries, or better fund our schools so that we could pay lower property taxes, or help local government with the rising costs they face and covering law enforcement and first responders so that they can reduce their property taxes, I would be absolutely ecstatic. As the gentleman from 28 says, he hates property taxes, but this is the only thing he has to vote on, and that is the tragedy. I'll be voting no.
Is there further debate?
Mr. Speaker, to debate a second time.
For the second time. Does there anyone wish to debate the bill for the first time? Gentleman from 24.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Looked like I wasn't going to have to, but I do want to get up and make a final comment. I don't think this is a perfect bill. I think it's a good bill, and I think it's going in the right direction. I really like the rebates. I would prefer property tax relief, but I'm going to support this bill because it's the best bill before us. We may find ways, as the legislature goes on, to find a way to reduce property taxes. I really would like to see that. I know there's others in here that rather reduce grocery taxes or food taxes, but for me, property tax is the #1 issue. And I'm working towards that. I have heard a few things stated on the floor that, like a statement, and I'm going to find out if this is actually still true. There was a statement made about if you buy something from Amazon, that money's going to a tax relief fund. I hope that's no longer true because they have a pretty good nexus in Idaho now, and I would hope that money is going into the regular general fund. I do have, as people know, I have some personal ties to that tax relief fund, and I do not feel comfortable with the idea that there's a regular ongoing withdrawal from that fund in the future to go into the general fund. Not so much as going to the general fund, but primarily to support this tax relief, ongoing income tax relief. But I also know, I've been in this legislature long enough, that things can change and we can change things. So if there's ways that we can look for better ways to do tax relief, I would like to see that. I want to make one comment about local government and property taxes and the statement that the only way local property taxes can go down is to reduce their spending. If their incomes, local governments, was tied to sales and income taxes, they'd have the same problem we have right now, but theirs is not. When they set their budgets and set their levies for taxes, that's what they get. They don't get an overrun because the tax revenues ran higher. And that's one of the reasons why I think there's somewhat of an issue that we have to deal with local property taxes, local government. I have a soft spot there. A lot of people know that. But I do think we have to consider that. And there may be some other opportunities we have. I will be voting yes on this bill, but I hope that, the good news is there's more time ahead of us. And the other great news is we always sine die about 2 weeks after this bill. So thank you.
Well, there is that. Is there further debate? For the first time, gentleman from 15, for what purpose do you rise?
Mr. Speaker, to debate very briefly for a second time.
First time going once. Gentleman from 15, you have the floor to debate
Thank you, Mr.
the bill
Speaker.
for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I just wanted to, wasn't planning this, but in hearing the comments that were made from the good gentleman of 24 and the good lady from 14 and the good gentleman from 29 at the very beginning. When I moved here in 1981, I voted on school bonds and levies maybe once every 7 or 10 years. And now I'm voting on just about every single year, in some cases multiple times a year. And those are the two dots that connect this bill and property tax. That we have to vote on school bonds and levies every single year to adequately fund it, and particularly making up for all the years that we didn't adequately fund it. So, thank you.
There further debate? Lady from 18 for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to very briefly respond to some of the things that were said since my first debate. First, I heard a lot of people get up and say, well, this isn't really the tax cut I want. I want to get rid of the grocery tax. I want to do property tax, but I guess this calls itself a tax cut, so I guess I'll vote for it. Again, I would underscore the opportunity cost that you are facing here. The good lady to my left will eat her hat. I will eat a shoe. I will lay down a bet. If anybody wants, I'm a betting woman. If anybody wants to bet that there is any possibility of passing the elimination of the grocery tax once this goes through, happily take you up on that. Maybe the tooth fairy will get rid of the grocery tax after this passes. Your odds are better. So by voting for this bill today, you are striking a dagger through the heart of the prospect of eliminating the grocery tax. To the good lady from District 6 who talked about the challenges facing businesses, those businesses on the border, I would bet that the big challenge they're facing is that they're competing with businesses across the border that aren't charging grocery tax. I bet that's a way bigger hit to their business than any good that's going to come to them from a 0.5% decrease in their corporate income tax. So if we want to help those businesses, this is not the kind of tax cut that's going to do it for them. The good lady from District 5 said that she was tired of hearing that millionaires are terrible. I don't know if that was aimed at me, but I certainly said nothing of the kind, and that would be a gross mischaracterization. Millionaires do wonderful philanthropic things. We're all very grateful for the things they do. They can be great people, but they are no better or worse than waitresses or car mechanics. The point was not that they are terrible people, but just questioning the wisdom of taking sales tax paid by waitresses and car mechanics and disproportionately bestowing it upon millionaires. The good gentleman from 31 said that he disagrees with redistribution from the poor to the rich. Nobody's proposing that. I would say that's a total straw man argument. What we're saying here is that we should let the poor people keep more of their taxes. Let the middle class keep more of their taxes. But at the very least, we should not be taking money from the poor to give to the rich. This is a redistributive bill, and it's in a very scary direction. So those were just, I think, some of the points that I wanted to make here. And again, just underscore the sadness that we fear. This bill kind of confirms my worst fears, and I think the worst fears of many Idahoans as to how their government works, and that they have a government that is there to serve the wealthy and well-connected and not the working folks.
Is there further debate? Hearing none. Hearing none. Channel 21, would you like to stand and close the debate?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. These two handouts that you have in front of you, I thought maybe I should have handed those out, but I didn't, but I'm glad they're here. The first one of them shows the fall of income and corporate tax over time. One shows the steady state of our state sales tax. They would now be both 6 and 6. That's a wonderful day. You look across the United States, you will find very few cases in any state where the income tax is higher than sales tax. We're one of the very few states that have a higher income tax than we have a sales tax rate. I didn't do a close look, but we may be one of the very few states. And as I mentioned before, we were very high in our income tax rates. For the typical ranges that folks pay. And of course, the second handout, we get this every year, and it looks the same up or down, right? Those who pay, those who get the rebate. Because it is a direct relationship on the rates to what you pay. It's a good bill, obviously. We've had lots of good comments on this. I'll give a couple moments to my co-sponsor for closing, but certainly please support this bill.
Without objection.
Gentleman yields.
Do you yield?
I would love to yield, Mr. Speaker.
You have the floor to finish the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'll try to be careful because I know everybody's tired of this, but I have to respond to some of the things you've heard today. Just a few, though. The good lady from 18 talked about a lot of things. And her and the lady from 19, the middle class. Under Idaho's current code, if you make a little over $30,000 and you're married, you're in that upper bracket. Welcome to the rich in Idaho. This helps relieve their pain in their taxes. She brought up a lot of stuff, too, about how everybody's talking about property tax. And since it's been brought up a lot, let's talk about property taxes for a minute, just a hair. One, this is important. The state collects no property taxes. Say that again. We do not collect property taxes. Two, the state spends no property taxes. That's done at a local level. Number three, if you've got a problem, I encourage you to call your mayor, city councilman, county commissioners, and others. The state does subsidize local governments. We send them back 11.5% of the sales tax. We send them back most of the alcohol tax. And in fact, one of the comments made by one of the debaters is that they're fixed budget and they can't get any more money. Oh, they get more money, occupancy tax, new construction. And last year, for example, they had an increase of 20% from the revenue sharing from sales tax. And while we're in here talking about an 8% budget, cities of Boise, had an overall 25%, city of Kuna 55%, Meridian 39%. So I hope that we can, as we talk about property taxes, remember, all we can do is constrain their bad habits and bad spending, not the other. This bill is not about that, though, so we can talk about that, and those bills are coming. Let's talk about this bill. Idaho needs to cut income taxes if you want to bring the businesses here to grow the economy. I get really tired when we keep saying we got to help these people that don't pay taxes. I agree, we need to help these people that don't pay taxes, but you can't give a tax cut to somebody who doesn't pay taxes. That's a hard thing to do. This is a bill that helps give those people who don't pay taxes money. It gives them relief also, but it also gives it back to those who pay taxes. I've got so much I want to say, but I'll shut up. But I will tell you this, last but not least. Last year, we passed an income tax cut bill, which was the biggest tax relief bill in Idaho history. Guess what happened when we came back here in January? We had the biggest flipping surplus we've ever had. Why? Because you gave the money back to the people. And what did they do? They spend it. And when they spend it, people got jobs and the economy rolled and it turned around and it rolled and it came back to us. And we're able to now do it again. And hopefully with this even larger relief bill, tax relief bill, we will come back to even larger surpluses next year and we can do it again. We can work together as we expand Idaho's economy and at the same time take care of all the other needs. There's a lot of money left over. There's 1.3. Let's get that done. We've got more we can do. But in the meantime, let's pass this bill. It's important. I thank you for the debate, and let's go to lunch.
Thank you. Debate is closed. The question before the House is, shall House Bill 436 pass? The clerk will unlock the machine and the members will record the votes and read the prayers. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change his vote? Clerk will lock the machine and read the pairs.
Gastron votes aye. Matthias votes nay. Burns votes nay. Bundy votes aye.
The vote count shows 57 in favor with 13 against. House Bill number 436 has passed the House and will be transmitted to the Senate.